Rain hammered against the towering glass walls of Hanseong Medical Center, turning the city lights of Seoul into blurred rivers of gold and crimson. Ambulance sirens screamed through the storm as doctors rushed from one emergency to another, but no one dared enter the private wing on the 32nd floor without permission. Everyone in Korea knew who lay inside room 3201. Or rather, everyone feared him. Kang Do-jun, a man whose name never appeared on any government document. Yet every politician, businessman, and crime syndicate whispered it with caution. They called him the Shadow Emperor, the invisible king whose empire stretched across ports, corporations, shipping companies, casinos, and secrets buried deeper than the ocean floor. For 20 years, no one challenged him and survived. Then, one bullet changed everything. 3 months earlier, a sniper's shot had struck his spinal cord during what newspapers described as a private charity gala. The media never learned the truth. Neither did the police. Someone inside his own organization had betrayed him. The assassination failed, but the damage did not. The once feared Mafia boss could no longer move from the chest down. Some doctors called it permanent paralysis. Others quietly admitted they had never seen a patient survive injuries that severe. Yet Kang Do-jun remained alive. Alive, but imprisoned inside his own body. Outside his hospital suite stood more than 20 heavily armed bodyguards dressed in black suits. They rotated every 6 hours, carried encrypted radios, and answered only to the Empire's Executive Council. No one entered without approval, no exceptions, until one ordinary Monday morning. "I'm assigning you to room 3201. The words came from head nurse Park without even looking up from her clipboard. Across the nurse station, every conversation stopped. One nurse dropped her coffee. Another nearly choked. Even the interns exchanged nervous glances. Standing in front of them was a young black nurse whose calm brown eyes reflected curiosity instead of fear. Her name was Naomi Carter. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, she had spent years volunteering in humanitarian medical missions before accepting a 2-year international nursing contract in South Korea. She had arrived only 4 days ago. She spoke Korean with a gentle accent and smiled far more often than most people in the hospital considered normal. She looked at the room number. "Is there something special about this patient?" Silence. Head nurse Park slowly raised her eyes. "You really don't know who he is?" Naomi shook her head. "I'm still learning everyone's names." One of the older nurses whispered, "She's serious." Another leaned closer. "Has nobody told her?" Head nurse Park sighed. "His name is Kang Do-jun." Naomi politely nodded. "Okay." The entire station stared at her. "Okay," another nurse repeated. Naomi smiled. "He's a patient, isn't he?" No one answered. Finally, the head nurse spoke in a quieter voice. "Everyone assigned to him has requested a transfer. Why? They say he never smiles." "So? He has fired doctors." Naomi blinked. "From a hospital bed?" "No." The head nurse lowered her voice even further. "He owns half this hospital." That explained the silence. Naomi looked toward the private elevator. "I've cared for veterans who lost all 4 limbs." She remembered an elderly firefighter who had survived a building collapse, a teenage cancer patient who spent 8 months unable to leave intensive care, a mother who woke from a coma believing her daughter was still alive. Compared to suffering, power meant very little. She accepted the assignment. The nurses watched her disappear down the polished hallway, as though they were witnessing someone voluntarily walk into a lion's den. 2 bodyguards blocked the entrance. Identification. Naomi handed over her badge. One guard scanned it. "You've been reassigned." "Yes." "First day?" "4th." The 2 men exchanged puzzled looks before opening the massive steel-reinforced door. The suite looked more like a luxury penthouse than a hospital room. Dark wood walls, float-a-ceiling windows, fresh orchids, private rehabilitation equipment, worth millions. 3 physicians stood near a bank of monitors, speaking in hushed voices. At the center of it all lay Kang Do-jun. He appeared younger than Naomi expected, perhaps 40, sharp jawline. Dark hair brushed neatly away from his forehead. Despite months confined to bed, he still carried the commanding presence of someone accustomed to giving orders rather than receiving them. Only the motionless blanket covering his lower body betrayed his condition. His eyes opened, cold, calculating, watching every movement. Naomi approached with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Mr. Kang." No response. She checked the IV line, heart monitor, medication schedule, blood pressure, everything with practiced precision. One physician leaned toward her. "Don't speak unless he asks you something." Naomi looked up. "Why?" The doctor hesitated. "Because," before he finished, Kang Do-jun spoke for the first time that morning. His voice was low, controlled, generously calm. "Leave us." The doctors immediately obeyed. Within seconds, only Naomi and the feared Mafia boss remained. Rain continued striking the windows. For several long moments, neither spoke. Finally, Kang's eyes settled on her name badge. "Naomi Carter, yes. You aren't afraid," she answered honestly. "I don't know you well enough to be." For the first time in weeks, something almost invisible crossed his face. Not a smile, not even close, but surprise. Every nurse who entered his room treated him either like a monster or a king. She treated him like neither, only a patient, and for reasons even Kang Do-jun could not explain. That unsettled him more than fear ever had. The silence between them stretched for several seconds. Most people couldn't survive 10 seconds alone with Kang Do-jun without becoming nervous. Naomi lasted nearly a full minute before speaking again. "Your blood pressure is slightly higher than I'd like." His expression remained unreadable. "Does that concern you?" "It would concern me if it were any patient. You don't know who I am. I know your medical chart." His eyes narrowed. "And what does it say?" Naomi picked up the tablet resting beside his bed. "It says you suffered extensive spinal trauma 3 months ago. Multiple surgeries, severe nerve damage, chronic pain, limited respiratory endurance, muscle atrophy beginning in your lower body, sleep deprivation." She looked at him kindly. "It also says you've refused physical therapy 6 times this week." He stared at the ceiling. "I've already lost." "No," she answered immediately. "You've been injured. There is a difference." His jaw tightened. "You Americans like inspirational speeches." Naomi smiled. "I don't." "Then why are you here?" "Because someone has to make sure you eat lunch." For the first time, the corner of one bodyguard's mouth twitched outside the room after hearing the exchange through the slightly open door. Inside, Kang Do-jun almost looked confused. People usually negotiated with him, feared him, worshipped him. No one had ever answered him with such ordinary honesty. Naomi checked the medication tray. "You skipped breakfast." "I wasn't hungry." "You also skipped dinner." "I wasn't hungry then either." She calmly picked up a bowl of warm rice porridge prepared by the hospital kitchen. "You still need nutrition." "I'm not eating." She placed the tray beside him anyway. "That's your decision." He looked at her. "You're giving up?" "No." She pulled a chair beside the bed. "I'll wait." 5 minutes passed. Neither spoke. Rain continued tapping against the windows. Finally, he asked, "Why aren't you leaving? You haven't eaten." "I told you no." "I heard you." "Then why stay?" "Because sometimes patients say no when they're actually saying, 'I'm exhausted.'" Something flickered behind his cold eyes. No doctor had ever spoken to him like that. They either obeyed every demand or argued. Naomi simply waited. After another minute, she lifted one spoonful of porridge. "I'm not feeding you." "I know. I'm just holding the spoon." He stared at it, then at her. Without another word, he slowly opened his mouth. Outside, 2 guards exchanged shocked glances. One quietly whispered into his radio. He ate. Within minutes, the message spread through the executive council. The boss had eaten. Meanwhile, several floors below, inside a luxurious conference room owned by Han Group Holdings, 7 executives sat around a polished black table. None smiled. The atmosphere felt colder than the rain outside. Vice Chairman Choi leaned forward. Our shipments have been delayed. Another executive nodded. The Japanese partners are demanding answers. What about the Singapore accounts? No movement. And the chairman? Silence. Finally, someone answered. He refuses all meetings. One elderly advisor sighed. The empire cannot function forever without its king. Across the table, a younger executive named Lee Min-seok hid a faint smile. Nobody noticed. 3 months earlier, he had secretly arranged the sniper attack. No one knew, not even Kang Do-jun. As long as the boss remained trapped inside that hospital bed, the empire slowly drifted toward the hands of ambitious men, exactly as Min-seok intended. Back upstairs, Naomi finished recording the morning assessment. She noticed several unopened books on a nearby shelf: history, business, poetry, one novel, all covered with dust. You used to read? I used to do many things. She gently wiped the dust from one book. You still can. I can't turn the pages. She looked around the room. So that's why nobody cleaned them. His eyes followed her. She carried the books back one by one, then opened the novel. What are you doing? Reading. I didn't ask you to. You didn't ask me not to. Without waiting for permission, Naomi began reading aloud. Her voice was calm, warm, steady. Outside the suite, guards stood perfectly still. Several nurses slowed as they passed the hallway. Even the head physician paused. For nearly 30 minutes, the feared ruler of Korea's underground empire listened quietly as someone read him a story. No business reports, no medical lectures, no discussions about enemies or money. Just a story. When she reached the end of the chapter, she gently closed the book. I'll continue tomorrow. He looked toward the window. I already know how it ends. Naomi smiled. Maybe, but stories sometimes feel different when someone shares them with you. She turned to leave. Just before reaching the door, his voice stopped her. Naomi. Yes. What made you become a nurse? For the first time since entering the room, she hesitated. My father. What happened? He was a paramedic. Her eyes softened with memory. He believed every life deserved the same effort, whether it belonged to a millionaire, a homeless man, or someone the world feared. She looked back at Kang Do-jun. He used to tell me, never let someone's reputation decide how much care they deserve. She smiled gently. So I don't. The door closed behind her. The room became quiet again. Kang stared at the closed door for a long time. He had spent his entire life building an empire through power, fear, and absolute control. Yet somehow, a nurse who knew nothing about his wealth, his enemies, or the blood on his hands had unsettled him more in 2 days than any rival ever had. Far down the hallway, hidden behind a corner, Lee Min-seok watched Naomi leave the suite. His pleasant smile slowly disappeared. So, he murmured, the new nurse is becoming a problem. He took out his phone. There are many ways to remove a problem. And as the rain continued falling over Seoul, someone else had just become the next target. The following morning, Seoul woke beneath a sky washed clean by the night's relentless rain. Sunlight poured over the city, reflecting off skyscrapers and turning the Han River into a ribbon of silver. Inside Hansong Medical Center, however, shadows lingered. Naomi Carter arrived 20 minutes before her shift. It was a habit she had developed years ago during humanitarian missions. Arriving early gave her time to review every patient's condition. Before the day became chaotic, she carried a cup of black coffee in one hand and a small notebook in the other. Head nurse Park looked up as Naomi entered the station. You're early again, Naomi smiled. I like quiet mornings. The older nurse hesitated before speaking. Mr. Kang asked whether you were working today. Naomi stopped walking. He asked. Head nurse Park nodded slowly. That was unexpected. Several nurses exchanged surprised looks. For 3 months, Kang Do-jun had barely acknowledged anyone by name. Yet he had remembered hers. Naomi simply nodded and continued toward the private elevator. Outside room 3201, the bodyguards greeted her with respectful bows. Something had changed. The cold suspicion in their eyes had softened, One of them even opened the door before she reached it. "Good morning, Nurse Carter," she smiled. "Good morning." Inside, Kang Do-jun was already awake, staring through the enormous window overlooking Seoul. Without turning around, he spoke. "You're 7 minutes earlier than yesterday." Naomi laughed softly. "You noticed." "I notice everything. I'll have to be careful then." A faint silence followed. For the first time in months, the atmosphere inside the room no longer felt suffocating. It felt human. Naomi began checking his vital signs. His blood pressure had improved. His heart rate was steadier. Most importantly, he had slept almost 6 hours. The previous week's average had been less than 2. She couldn't hide her satisfaction. "That's wonderful." "What is?" "You slept." "I suppose. No nightmares." His expression hardened. "I didn't say that." She paused. "You had nightmares." He said nothing. That was answer enough. Naomi gently adjusted his blanket. "I used to work with soldiers." His eyes shifted toward her. Many couldn't sleep after returning home. They weren't afraid. "I know. They were tired." Kang looked away. For years, he had convinced himself that exhaustion was weakness. Yet somehow, she understood the difference without him explaining it. A knock interrupted them. 3 executives entered the room wearing expensive, tailored suits. Vice Chairman Choi, Chief Financial Officer Han and Lee Min-seok, the man responsible for the sniper attack. Min-seok bowed respectfully. "Chairman." Kang's expression instantly became cold again. "What?" "The board requests your signature." He placed several folders on the bedside table. "International shipping contracts." Kang glanced at them without interest. "You've managed them before. The partners insist on your approval." Naomi quietly continued replacing the IV dressing while pretending not to listen. She noticed something. Every executive watched Kang, but only one watched her. Lee Min-seok. His smile never reached his eyes. It lasted only a second. Yet years of working emergency medicine had sharpened Naomi's instincts. She had seen that look before. Not in hospitals, in refugee camps. The expression of someone calculating. Someone hiding something. She made no comment. Instead, she finished changing the dressing. "I'm going to prepare your morning medication." As she reached the door, Min-seok politely stepped aside. "Nurse Carter." "Yes?" "I hear you've been taking excellent care of our chairman." "I'm doing my job." He smiled warmly. "We appreciate loyal people." His words sounded kind. His eyes did not. Naomi simply nodded and left. The moment the door closed, Min-seok's smile disappeared. "You trust her?" Kang looked at him. "I trust no one." "Then perhaps she should be replaced." "No." The single word echoed through the room. Min-seok blinked. "Chairman?" I said no. The meeting ended less than 5 minutes later. Outside, Min-seok walked calmly toward the elevator. Only after the doors closed did his expression darken. He removed his phone. "I need information." A voice answered immediately. "About the nurse?" "Everything. Family, friends, weaknesses. If she has none," he paused, "we'll create one." Meanwhile, Naomi entered the rehabilitation gym to speak with Dr. Yoon, the hospital's senior neurologist. "I've been reviewing Mr. Kang's scans." The doctor sighed. "We all have. I think he should begin passive muscle stimulation again." Dr. Yoon frowned. "He refuses." "What if someone stayed with him during therapy?" He dismissed every therapist. "What if I stayed?" The doctor looked genuinely surprised. "You would?" "Of course. He'll probably refuse." "Maybe," she smiled. "But maybe he's simply waiting for someone who refuses to give up." An hour later, Naomi returned to the suite carrying a lightweight rehabilitation brace. Kang immediately recognized it. "No, you haven't even heard my plan." "I don't need to." "You need physical therapy. I need my legs." Her smile faded. "I know." For several long seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Naomi walked to the enormous window overlooking Seoul. "It really is beautiful." He remained silent. She continued. "When I was 12, my father broke his leg, rescuing a child from a burning apartment." Kang looked at her. "He couldn't walk for months. What happened?" He hated depending on people. So he quit therapy. She nodded. For a while, what changed? I did. She smiled at the memory. I challenged him. What challenge? I told him if he skipped therapy, I'd skip school. For the first time, a tiny laugh escaped Kang Do-jun, barely audible, but unmistakable. Outside the room, two bodyguards froze. One whispered into his radio. The chairman, what? I think, I think, he just laughed. Inside, Kang shook his head. That was a terrible strategy. It worked. My father gave up arguing after 3 days. Naomi held up the rehabilitation brace. So, what's your strategy with me? She smiled. I don't have one. I simply believe the strongest people are the ones willing to try one more time. Kang stared at the brace, then at the city beyond the glass. Finally, almost reluctantly, he nodded once. 10 minutes. Naomi's face brightened. 10 minutes is enough to begin. Neither of them noticed the tiny camera hidden inside a smoke detector above the door. Miles away, in a luxury penthouse overlooking Seoul, Lee Min-seok watched the live video feed on a massive screen. His fingers tightened around a crystal glass. So, he whispered coldly, she's giving him hope. His eyes narrowed. And hope is far more dangerous than medicine. He reached for another phone. This time, he wasn't calling an investigator. He was calling a killer. There's a nurse at Hanseong Medical Center. A chilling pause followed. I want the accident to happen soon. The line went dead. Far across the city, an engine started. Someone was already on the move. The rehabilitation room was unusually quiet. Only the soft hum of medical equipment and the distant rhythm of rain tapping against the windows filled the silence. Naomi knelt beside Kang Do-jun's wheelchair, carefully fastening the support braces around his motionless legs. I'm going to explain every step before we begin, she said gently. You don't have to. I know. She tightened the final strap. But I always do. Kang watched her hands. They never rushed, never trembled. Every movement carried the confidence of someone who believed patients deserved dignity, even when they couldn't move. Dr. Yoon entered with 2 physical therapists. I never thought I'd see this day, he admitted. Kang looked at him. Don't celebrate yet. The doctor smiled politely. I'll take 10 minutes over 0. Naomi positioned her hands carefully beneath Kang's shoulders. This might hurt. It always hurts. I know, she counted softly. 1, 2, 3. With the therapist supporting his weight, Kang was slowly lifted into a standing frame. The moment his feet touched the platform, pain shot through his body like lightning. His breathing became uneven. His hands gripped the armrests until his knuckles turned white. Sweat appeared across his forehead within seconds. Enough, he growled. Naomi looked directly into his eyes. Look at me. He didn't. Mr. Kang. Finally, he met her gaze. Not the pain. Look at me. Take 1 slow breath. He obeyed almost without realizing it. In, she inhaled. He followed. Out, another breath. Again. The panic gradually eased. The pain remained, but he was no longer fighting it alone. You've been standing for 38 seconds, Naomi said with a smile. His eyes widened slightly. It feels longer. That's because you're winning. He almost argued. Instead, he stayed upright. 1 minute, then 2. By the time 5 minutes had passed, every therapist in the room looked stunned. Dr. Yoon quietly whispered, This is farther than he made it in 3 months. Naomi didn't celebrate. She simply remained beside him. You've got this. When the 10 minutes were over, Kang was gently lowered back into the wheelchair. His entire body was exhausted, yet something inside him felt different. Not stronger, not healed, just lighter. News traveled quickly through the hospital. The chairman completed therapy. He stood for 10 minutes. Doctors who had nearly given up on his recovery exchanged hopeful glances. Even skeptical nurses admitted something had changed. But not everyone welcomed the news. Across the city, inside a luxurious office overlooking the Han River, Lee Min-seok slammed a folder onto his desk. 10 minutes? His assistant lowered his head. Yes, sir. I was told he refused rehabilitation. He did. So what changed? The American nurse. Min Seok's jaw tightened. No, the black nurse. The assistant corrected himself immediately. Yes, Nurse Naomi Carter. Min Seok walked toward the window. He watched traffic crawling through downtown Seoul. I underestimated kindness. His reflection stared back at him. That won't happen again. He reached for a secure phone. When? A cold voice answered. Tonight. No mistakes. There won't be. That evening, Naomi finally finished her shift. The hospital lobby buzzed with visitors heading home. She waved goodbye to head nurse Park. See you tomorrow. Take care. Naomi stepped outside into the cool evening air. The rain had stopped. Streetlights reflected across the wet pavement. She slipped on her headphones and began walking toward the nearby subway station. She never noticed the black sedan parked across the street. Inside sat two men. One adjusted a baseball cap. The target is leaving. The driver started the engine. Wait for the crosswalk. The sedan rolled forward slowly. Naomi stopped beside a small convenience store to buy bottled water. The killers waited patently. Across town, Kang Do-jun lay awake in his hospital suite. For reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. He stared at the ceiling. His instincts had kept him alive for decades. Whenever danger approached, he sensed it. Tonight was no different. He pressed the emergency call button. Within seconds, Chief Bodyguard Jay entered. Chairman, where's Nurse Carter? Jay looked surprised. She left 20 minutes ago. Call her. Sir? Now. Jay immediately dialed the hospital's personnel office. No answer. He tried Naomi's work phone. It had already been turned in after her shift. Kang's voice became sharper. Her personal number. We don't have authorization. Then get authorization. Jay had served Kang for 15 years. He had never seen his employer this unsettled over anyone. Within moments, another guard rushed inside. Chairman. What? We just received traffic camera alerts. Kang's eyes narrowed. What alerts? A vehicle registered to one of Min Seok's shell companies has been circling the hospital. Silence filled the room. Then Kang spoke 3 words. They're hunting her. The guards exchanged alarmed looks. Kang's voice became the commanding voice that had once ruled an empire. Deploy everyone. Chairman, that's nearly 50 men. I didn't ask for a number. I gave an order. The room exploded into action. Phones rang. Black SUVs roared out of underground garages across Seoul. Encrypted radios crackled. For the first time since the assassination attempt, Kang Do-jun wasn't thinking about protecting himself. Every resource of his vast organization moved with one purpose: finding Naomi Carter. Naomi exited the convenience store carrying a small paper bag. The crosswalk signal turned green. She smiled politely at an elderly woman waiting beside her. You go first. The woman nodded gratefully and stepped onto the road. At that exact moment, the black sedan's engine roared. Its headlights flashed. The driver slammed his foot onto the accelerator. The car shot toward the crosswalk at terrifying speed. Naomi's eyes widened. The elderly woman froze in fear. Without thinking, Naomi dropped her bag and lunged forward. She shoved the woman clear of the speeding vehicle. Tires screamed. People shouted. The sedan swerved violently. And in the split second before impact, someone grabbed Naomi from behind with incredible force. Both of them crashed onto the sidewalk as the black sedan sped past, smashing into a traffic barrier before disappearing into the night. Breathing hard, Naomi looked up at the stranger who had pulled her to safety. He wore a black suit, an earpiece, and the unmistakable emblem of Kang Do-jun's security division on his lapel. The bodyguard spoke urgently into his radio. We found Nurse Carter. A brief pause. She's alive. Hundreds of meters away, inside the hospital, Kang Do-jun closed his eyes. For the first time that night, he allowed himself to exhale. But neither he nor Naomi knew that the failed hit was only the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness, Lee Min-seok stared at a live report on his phone. His expression remained perfectly calm. One failure. he whispered. Means we need a better plan. He slowly closed the screen. And next time, there will be no witnesses. The flashing lights of police cars painted the rain-soaked street in shades of red and blue. Paramedics rushed toward Naomi, but she gently shook her head. I'm okay. One of them examined the scrape on her arm. You were lucky. Naomi glanced at the elderly woman she had pushed to safety. The woman, still trembling, clutched Naomi's hands with tears streaming down her face. You saved my life, the woman whispered. Naomi smiled softly. I'm just glad you're safe. Before she could say anything else, 3 black SUVs pulled up beside the sidewalk. The doors opened in perfect unison. More than a dozen men in black suits stepped out, scanning every direction with practiced precision. Pedestrians instinctively moved aside. Chief Bodyguard Jay approached Naomi and bowed slightly. Nurse Carter, she looked surprised. Mr. Jay, the chairman has instructed us to escort you. Escort me? Immediately. Naomi frowned. Why? Jay hesitated for a moment. Because someone just tried to kill you. Back at Hansong Medical Center, Kong Du-jun sat awake in the dimly lit suite. The television silently replayed footage of the hit-and-run attempt, the sedan, the screaming crowd, the woman Naomi had saved. He watched the clip again and again. Every replay confirmed the same thing. Naomi hadn't tried to save herself. She had risked her own life for a complete stranger. The door opened. Chief Bodyguard Jay entered. Chairman? Is she injured? Only minor cuts. Kang closed his eyes briefly. And the woman? Alive, because of Nurse Carter. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Kang spoke. Bring her here. 30 minutes later, Naomi stepped into the private suite. She looked exhausted. A small bandage covered her forearm. Kang's gaze immediately fell on the fresh wound. You should be resting. Naomi smiled. So should you. Despite everything that had happened, her voice remained calm. She sat in the chair beside his bed. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Kang broke the silence. Why? She looked confused. Why what? The woman. You didn't know her. No, you could have died. Naomi looked toward the city lights beyond the window. My father used to say, if you have time to wonder whether you should help someone, you've already waited too long. Kang lowered his eyes. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not because they feared him. Not because they wanted something. Simply because they believed it. You don't value your own life? Naomi looked directly at him. I value every life. Mine too? The question surprised even him. She answered without hesitation. Yes. You know what I've done? I know what your medical chart says. He almost smiled. You really don't read the news. I read people. That answer lingered in the room, long after the words were spoken. Across the city, Lee Min-seok stood inside an abandoned warehouse. The failed attack had left him furious. 2 men stood before him with lowered heads. You missed. One of them swallowed nervously. The bodyguards arrived too quickly. Min-seok stepped closer. I don't pay for excuses. Without warning, he struck one man across the face. The warehouse fell silent. I gave one simple order. The injured man wiped blood from his lip. It won't happen again. No, Min-seok replied coldly. It won't. He turned to another associate. Find someone else. Someone who doesn't fail. The following morning, Naomi entered Kang's room carrying breakfast. To her surprise, the tray from the kitchen had already been opened. You ate? Kang nodded once. I was hungry. Naomi couldn't hide her smile. That's progress. It isn't. It is. She handed him a cup of warm tea. He accepted it, another small victory. While checking his medications, she noticed something unusual on the bedside table. A leather-bound notebook. It hadn't been there before. What is this? My schedule. She looked at him. I no longer need it. She opened it carefully. Every page was filled with meetings, shipments, negotiations, and handwritten notes stretching back years. The final entries stopped on the day of the assassination attempt. I haven't looked at it since. Naomi gently closed the notebook. That must be difficult. It feels like reading another man's life. She nodded thoughtfully. Maybe, But that man is still here. He looked at his motionless legs. No. She placed a hand over the notebook. Your empire wasn't built by your legs. It was built by your mind and your decisions. You haven't lost either. For the first time in months, Kang considered the possibility that she might be right. Later that afternoon, Dr. Yoon entered with new scan results. I have encouraging news. Naomi looked up. What is it? The latest imaging shows slight nerve activity. She blinked. Really? The doctor smiled. It's small, very small, but it wasn't there before. Kang remained silent. He had learned not to celebrate too early. Dr. Yoon continued. Recovery is still uncertain, but this means continued therapy is worthwhile. After the doctor left, Naomi turned back toward Kang. What do you think? He stared at the city skyline. I think, he paused. Tomorrow we'll try 15 minutes. Naomi's smile lit up the room. I'll be here. Outside the suite, several guards exchanged satisfied glances. Their chairman was fighting again, not with guns, not with fear, but with determination. Neither of them realized that someone inside the hospital had secretly copied Dr. Yoon's medical report. Within minutes, the document reached Lee Min-seok. He read every word carefully, then folded the paper. So, the impossible is becoming possible. His expression darkened. If Kang Do-jun stands again, everything I've planned will collapse. He reached into his desk drawer and removed a small silver key. It unlocked a hidden safe. Inside rested a thin black folder labeled Project Eclipse. He opened it slowly. The first page contained a single sentence. If the chairman survives, eliminate everyone keeping him alive. Min-seok smiled. This game is finally becoming interesting. The next morning, Hanseong Medical Center felt different. Security checkpoints had doubled overnight. Every visitor's identification was scanned twice. Plainclothes bodyguards blended into waiting rooms, cafeterias, and even the rehabilitation wing. No one questioned the sudden changes. Everyone understood one thing. Someone had tried to kill the chairman's nurse, and whoever had ordered it might try again. Naomi arrived just before sunrise. As she stepped off the private elevator, Chief Bodyguard Jay was waiting. You'll have an escort from now on. She sighed. Mr. Jay, I'm a nurse, not a politician. It's not my decision. It's his. She smiled helplessly. I thought so. When she entered room 3201, Kang Do-jun was already awake. A rehabilitation brace rested beside his bed. You were ready before I arrived. He looked toward the window. I didn't sleep much. Worried? I was thinking. About therapy? He slowly shook his head. About enemies. Naomi pulled the curtains open, allowing warm morning sunlight to flood the room. You've spent your whole life preparing for enemies. He looked at her. What makes you think that? You always sit facing the door. He blinked. You notice everything. For the first time, a genuine smile, small but unmistakable, appeared on his face. The smile lasted only a second, but it was real. Outside the room, two guards froze. One whispered into his radio. The chairman smiled. The reply came instantly. Are you certain? I've protected him for 15 years. I've never seen that smile before. Rehabilitation began shortly afterward. Today's goal was 15 minutes. Standing was still agonizing. Every muscle trembled. Sweat soaked Kang's shirt within moments. His breathing became ragged. You can stop, Dr. Yoon offered. No, Kang's voice remained steady despite the pain. Not yet. Naomi stood beside him. One breath at a time. He nodded. She counted softly. 5 minutes, 8, 10. His arms shook violently. Dr. Yoon looked concerned. Chairman, that's enough. Kang closed his eyes. How long? 12 minutes. He inhaled deeply. Then 3 more. The therapists exchanged astonished glances. 3 months ago, he refused to stand for 30 seconds. Now he refused to quit. When the timer finally reached 15 minutes, applause quietly broke out among the rehabilitation staff. Kang looked uncomfortable. Don't, Naomi laughed. They're not celebrating perfection. They're celebrating progress. That afternoon, While Naomi organized medication records, a little boy wandered into the rehabilitation gym. He couldn't have been older than 8. His head was wrapped in a bandage. An IV pole rolled beside him. He stared curiously at Kang. "Were you a superhero?" The room fell silent. His mother looked horrified. "Ji-hoon, I'm so sorry." She hurried toward Kang, bowing repeatedly. "I'm terribly sorry, Chairman." Kang ignored her apology. Instead, he looked at the boy. "Why would you ask that?" The child shrugged. "Because only superheroes get that many bodyguards." Naomi couldn't help laughing. Even Dr. Yoon smiled. To everyone's surprise, Kang answered, "I used to think I was." "What happened?" "I learned I wasn't." The little boy considered the answer carefully. "My dad says superheroes aren't the strongest people." "What are they?" "The people who protect others." The innocent words settled over the room. The child smiled at Naomi. "Like the nurse who saved that grandma." Kang turned slowly toward Naomi. She looked embarrassed. "It wasn't a big deal." The boy shook his head. "It was to her." Before leaving, Ji-hoon walked over and placed a folded paper on Kang's blanket. "I drew this." After the child left, Kang unfolded it. It was a crayon drawing. A man sitting in a wheelchair, a smiling nurse beside him. Above them, written in crooked English letters, were the words, "Get well soon." Kang stared at the picture for a long time. Then he carefully placed it inside the leather notebook Naomi had found days earlier. Meanwhile, deep beneath an abandoned shipping warehouse near Incheon Harbor, Lee Min-seok met with the leaders of Project Eclipse. A massive digital map of Seoul glowed on the wall. Hospital blueprints filled the screen. One man pointed to the intensive care wing. "The chairman's security is too strong." "What about the nurse?" "Also protected." Min-seok folded his arms. "Then we don't attack either of them." The room became silent. "We attack their hope." He pressed a button. Another blueprint appeared. The hospital's emergency power system, backup generators, oxygen supply lines, medical servers. If Hanseong Medical Center goes dark, KOs will do what assassins couldn't. One of the men looked uneasy. "There are hundreds of patients." Min-seok didn't even blink. "There are always casualties in war." That evening, Naomi prepared to leave after another long shift. As she reached the elevator, Kang spoke. "Wait." She turned around. "Yes?" He held out the folded crayon drawing. "You forgot this." She smiled. "No, it's yours." "I gave it to you?" The boy did. She gently shook her head. "He drew it because he saw you trying." She stepped closer and placed the picture back into his notebook. "Keep it, so you'll remember that people are already beginning to believe in you again." For several seconds, Kang couldn't find the right words. Finally, he spoke quietly. "Thank you." Naomi smiled warmly. "You're welcome." She stepped into the elevator. The doors slowly closed. Neither of them noticed the maintenance worker mopping the hallway nearby. He wore a hospital uniform, plilled an ordinary cleaning cart, and kept his head lowered. The moment the elevator disappeared, he stopped mopping. He reached beneath the cart, removed a small electronic device, and quietly attached it beneath the electrical control panel outside Kang Do-jun's private suite. A tiny red light began blinking, high beneath layers of insulation. The countdown had already begun. At exactly 9:47 p.m., the tiny red light beneath the electrical control panel stopped blinking. The device activated. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the lights throughout Hanseong Medical Center flickered violently. Monitors beeped. Computers shut down. The entire 32nd floor plunged into darkness. Emergency alarms echoed through the building. Doctors rushed into hallways. Patients cried out in confusion. Within seconds, the hospital's backup generators should have activated. They didn't. Someone had sabotaged them. In room 3201, Kang Do-jun's heart monitor switched to battery power. Chief Bodyguard Jay grabbed his radio. "Emergency! Lock down the chairman's floor." Security teams flooded the corridors. Meanwhile, Naomi had just reached the hospital lobby. after remembering she had left her notebook upstairs. When the power failed, she instinctively turned and ran back toward the elevators. They were dead. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward the emergency stairwell. 32 floors. She didn't stop. Doctors climbing down passed her in disbelief. "Nurse, the stairs aren't safe. There are patients upstairs." She kept running. Her lungs burned. Her legs trembled, but she refused to slow down. Inside the security control room, masked intruders quietly entered through a maintenance tunnel. They disabled surveillance systems one by one. The hospital became blind. Hide among the chaos, Lee Min-seok walked calmly through a restricted hallway wearing a doctor's coat. No one recognized him. His destination was simple. Room 3201. If Kang died tonight, his empire would finally belong to someone else. Back on the 32nd floor, emergency lights cast dim red shadows across the corridor. Bodyguards surrounded Kang's suite. Suddenly, gunshots shattered the silence. The attackers had arrived. Glass exploded. Smoke filled the hallway. The guards returned fire, forcing doctors and nurses into nearby rooms. Chief Bodyguard Jay blocked the entrance. "No one gets through." The battle echoed across the floor. Inside the suite, Kang sat helplessly in his wheelchair. For the first time in years, he hated being unable to stand. Outside the door, footsteps approached rapidly. The door burst open. It wasn't an attacker. It was Naomi, breathing heavily. After climbing 32 flights of stairs, she leaned against the doorway, struggling to catch her breath. "You?" Kang stared at her, came back. She smiled despite her exhaustion. "I forgot my notebook." For one brief second, they both laughed, even in the middle of chaos. Then another explosion shook the floor. Naomi immediately pushed Kang's wheelchair toward the emergency exit. "We have to move." The bodyguards formed a protective shield around them. As they entered the stairwell, a gunman appeared at the end of the corridor. He raised his weapon before he could fire. A loud voice echoed through the smoke. "Drop it." Everyone turned. Lee Min-seok stepped out of the shadows. The gunman hesitated. "Sir?" Min-seok sighed. "You've failed." Without warning, he turned his own weapon on the attacker. One shot. The gunman collapsed. The remaining attackers froze in confusion. Chief Bodyguard Jay took advantage of the moment. "Move." Security officers rushed forward, overpowering the stunned intruders. Within minutes, police special units stormed the hospital. The attack was over. Hours later, investigators uncovered everything. Project Eclipse, the assassination attempt, the hospital sabotage, the sniper attack months earlier. Every piece of evidence led back to Lee Min-seok. Cornered by overwhelming proof, he was arrested without resistance. As officers led him away, he looked once toward Kang. "I almost had everything." Kang met his gaze calmly. "No, you almost lost your humanity." Min-seok lowered his head for the first time. He had no answer. Several weeks passed. The hospital slowly returned to normal. Physical therapy continued every day. 10 minutes became 20. 20 became 40. Then one unforgettable morning, Dr. Yoon smiled at the latest test results. "Chairman, I want you to try." Kang gripped the parallel bars. Naomi stood beside him, just as she had from the beginning. "You don't have to rush." He nodded. Taking a deep breath, he shifted his weight forward. One foot, a slight movement. Then another. His legs trembled violently. Everyone held their breath. Slowly, painfully, he took a single step. The rehabilitation room erupted in applause. Several nurses wiped tears from their eyes. Chief Bodyguard Jay quietly turned away, pretending to adjust his tie. Naomi simply smiled. "I knew you could." Kang looked down at the floor. "It wasn't impossible." "No," she replied softly. "It was just one step at a time." 6 months later, the headquarters of the Kang Group welcomed employees for the first board meeting since the assassination attempt. Executives stood as Kang Do-jun entered the conference room. He still used a cane. His walk was slow, but every step was his own. The room fell silent. He reached the head of the table. No speech, No threats. Only one sentence. The empire. He looked around the room. Was never mine because people feared me. His eyes briefly met Naomi's, who had been invited as a special guest. It survives because good people refused to give up on me. The room remained silent, not out of fear, out of respect. A few days later, Hansong's medical center opened a new rehabilitation center. Above its entrance hung a simple bronze plaque. It read, "Dedicated to every caregiver who refuses to give up when hope seems impossible." Naomi stood quietly before it. Kang joined her. "You never asked me for anything," she smiled. "I already had everything I needed." What was that? The chance to help someone. Kang looked toward the busy rehabilitation wing, where patients practiced walking, laughing, and believing in tomorrow. For years, he had ruled an empire built on power, but the greatest victory of his life had not come from wealth, influence, or fear. It had come from a nurse who looked beyond his reputation and saw a human being worth saving. And in saving his life, she had quietly saved the man he had almost forgotten how to be, but no longer afraid of it. Like, subscribe, and support my channel. I really need your support. If you enjoy my video, please share it and leave your feedback in the comments.